Corrupt judge insults JD Vance in court. Minutes later, he's in handcuffs. The courtroom was packed. Spectators filled every available seat, buzzing with a mix of tension and excitement. This was no ordinary trial. It was a high-stakes hearing involving Senator JD Vance, whose sharp criticisms of judicial misconduct had earned him both praise and enemies. At the center of today's storm was Judge Ronald Graves, a man with a reputation for questionable rulings and an air of untouchable arrogance. The case at hand was minor, a local zoning dispute in which Vance had offered legal advice to a community group. But what should have been a straightforward hearing had taken a strange turn when Judge Graves stepped into the room. But before we dive into what happens next, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from today? Drop a comment below and please like the video. Thank you. Dressed in his robe and carrying his gavel like a weapon, Graves smirked as he glanced at Vance seated in the gallery. From the very start, his disdain was palpable. Instead of focusing on the legal arguments, Graves took the opportunity to launch into a tirade. "You think you're some kind of hero, Senator Vance?" he sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Parading around as the defender of justice while meddling in matters you clearly don't understand. Perhaps you should stick to politics and leave the law to those of us who are qualified." The courtroom fell silent. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and even the opposing counsel looked uneasy. JD Vance, ever composed, remained calm under the verbal onslaught. He didn't rise to the bait, but instead watched the judge with a measured intensity. Graves, emboldened by the lack of immediate backlash, continued. "Your presence here is nothing more than a political stunt, wasting this court's valuable time. Maybe next time, you'll think twice before pretending to be an expert where you're clearly not." Just as the judge prepared to hammer down his gavel and proceed, something unexpected happened. One of the federal marshals stationed near the door stepped forward, holding up a hand to interrupt. "Your Honor," the marshal said firmly, "I need to speak with you, now." Graves' face darkened. "This is highly irregular. I'm in the middle of court proceedings," he snapped. The marshal didn't flinch. "I have a warrant for your arrest, Judge Graves." The room erupted in stunned whispers. Graves's smug demeanor crumbled instantly. What is the meaning of this?" he stammered, his voice suddenly shaky. The marshal pulled out a folder and began reading aloud. "Judge Ronald Graves, you are under arrest for bribery, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to defraud the state. Evidence shows you accepted payments to influence case outcomes and suppressed key evidence in multiple trials." Graves's face turned ashen. He attempted to protest, but his words were incoherent. Meanwhile, JD Vance sat in his seat, his expression stoic but clearly aware that justice was unfolding right before everyone's eyes. The courtroom was chaos. Reporters scrambled to capture every angle, while attorneys and spectators murmured in disbelief. The once powerful judge, now visibly trembling, was handcuffed and escorted out of the courtroom. As Graves was led away, JD Vance finally spoke, his voice steady but pointed. "This isn't about me or my presence here today. It's about accountability. No one, no matter how powerful, is above the law." The moment became an instant media sensation. Within hours, the story of Judge Graves's arrest went viral, highlighting years of corruption that had finally been exposed. Investigations revealed a web of unethical dealings spanning decades, tarnishing the judge's once lofty reputation. As for JD Vance, he walked out of the courthouse not as a victim of insults, but as a symbol of resilience and integrity. The people in the courtroom that day knew they had witnessed history, a stark reminder that even those who believe they are untouchable can be held to account. Graves' arrest sent shockwaves through the legal community, and the aftermath was nothing short of seismic. As the disgraced judge was led out of the courtroom, reporters outside swarmed the scene, their cameras flashing like a storm of lightning. Graves, who once basked in the power of his position, now kept his head low, muttering inaudible protests as the federal marshals escorted him to an unmarked car. Inside the courtroom, JD Vance rose slowly from his seat, the murmurs around him growing louder. He adjusted his tie, his composure unwavering, and began making his way toward the exit. People stepped aside, some reaching out to shake his hand, others offering words of encouragement. "Senator Vance," one of the community group leaders said, stopping him near the doors, "thank you for standing up to corruption. None of this would have happened without your efforts." Vance gave a faint smile and a nod. "The system only works if people are willing to challenge it. This is just the beginning. There's a lot more to uncover." Later that evening, news outlets aired exclusive details about the case. Investigative journalists revealed that Judge Graves had been under surveillance for months. His lavish lifestyle had raised suspicion, expensive vacations, properties far beyond his official income, and connections to shady businessmen with interests in several high-profile cases he had presided over. It was JD Vance's public criticism of judicial misconduct, however, that had prompted a deeper investigation. Graves had viewed Vance's remarks as a threat, which explained his outburst in court. As the scandal unraveled, more victims of Graves's corrupt rulings came forward. Families whose cases had been dismissed unfairly, individuals who had lost everything due to manipulated decisions, and even former colleagues who had been silenced now found the courage to speak out. The case became a rallying cry for judicial reform, with JD Vance at the forefront of the movement. Meanwhile, Graves sat in a holding cell, his arrogance replaced by desperation. He had once believed himself untouchable, a king in his courtroom. Now, stripped of his robe and gavel, he was just another defendant awaiting his fate. His lawyers scrambled to negotiate a deal, but the evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, wiretaps, and whistleblower testimonies painted a damning picture. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of hearings and revelations. JD Vance continued to address the media, not as a victor, but as an advocate for change. He stressed the importance of accountability and called for a thorough review of cases presided over by Graves. "This isn't about politics or personal vendettas," he told reporters. "It's about restoring faith in the justice system. People need to know they can trust the courts to deliver fair and impartial rulings." Graves's trial was swift and decisive. The evidence presented was irrefutable, and the jury deliberated for less than a day before delivering a guilty verdict. The once powerful judge was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison, his name forever associated with disgrace. For JD Vance, the incident became a defining moment in his career. His calm demeanor in the face of Graves's insults and his commitment to exposing corruption earned him respect across party lines. His critics were forced to acknowledge his integrity, and his supporters rallied behind him with renewed enthusiasm. The courtroom where it all began was now quiet, but its significance echoed far beyond its walls. It became a symbol of accountability, a reminder that even the most entrenched corruption could be dismantled when confronted with courage and persistence. JD Vance's role in the ordeal cemented his legacy as not just a politician, but a defender of justice.